Welcome to the first webinar in the 2025 Earth Science Week webinar series that celebrates the theme, Energy Resources for Our Future. This theme calls for a recognition of the natural energy resources that can be found across all of Earth's spheres, from the movement of water and wind to energy stored in fossil fuels and geothermal sources, and how knowledge of the geosciences can inform decisions on how these energy resources are used. Our energy future calls for navigating complex choices about how we power our homes, businesses, and transportation. These decisions require a deep understanding of their environmental, social, and economic impacts so people can harness energy sources to generate electricity in a way that is sustainable. The Earth Science Week theme, Energy Resources for Our Future, is also intended to highlight the sustainable use of minerals, especially critical minerals, that are vital components in renewable energy technologies. Earth Science Week 2025 encourages us to become informed energy consumers and actively work toward a sustainable future that ensures a high quality of life for generations to come. For more information on Earth Science Week and to access resources related to this year's theme, please visit our website. This webinar is sponsored by the National Energy Education Development Project and features 4 speakers who will talk about their educational energy resources, starting with Emily Hawbaker, NEED's Curriculum Director, who will give an introduction to the NEED Project's mission, content, and teacher workshops.
Hello, my name is Emily Hawbaker. I'm the Curriculum Director for the National Energy Education Development Project, or NEED, the NEED Project. We are really pleased to be presenting this webinar today with AGI for Earth Science Week. As the theme is energy, for just this week for AGI, energy is all that we do here at NEED. And today's webinar, called Energizing Your Learning Environment, we're going to present some strategies and examples for incorporating energy content into your classroom as you're going through that toolkit, as you're learning more about energy, and as you're looking for more resources. We encourage you to check ours out and think about some of the ways that you could bring energy into your classroom. And we have some really awesome experts at NEED who are experts in education, but are also experts in lots of other things to share some fun and interesting strategies with you to try and help you make your class content a little more energy focused. I am the curriculum director for NEED, as I mentioned, and I have been working with NEED for 13 years in this position, but I also used NEED in my classroom prior to working for NEED as a middle school science teacher outside of Philadelphia. And so I first came across NEED as a first-year teacher and started using materials and helping to make those materials better. And that's kind of the core of what NEED is and how we've put materials together. And that's why we want to share more with you. So before we talk and hear from our experts, I thought it would be important to discuss a little bit about who NEED is and how to access our resources, so that as you learn from our experts later, you'll have all of the tools in your sort of belt or your toolkit to help you feel more confident in teaching energy and bringing energy content in your classroom. So NEED has been around for 45 years, and our content was put together, much like I described, by a bunch of teachers who kept sharing feedback. We're using materials, we're talking about energy, and said, hey, let's put some stuff together. And the NEED project has been around for 45 years. And our key goal, our key mission as an energy education nonprofit is to make sure that our students and our society are going to be energy educated, energy conscious, and energy aware. We want to create networks of students, future leaders, all of those things who are aware of energy and how we use it, but how we can use it more mindfully. We work with teachers, we work with students across the country. We want to train those teachers and support their classrooms. We want to provide content that teachers feel comfortable using, and we want to provide content that kind of removes the bias, is really focused on just the science, just the facts, and we want to make sure it's timely. So all of our materials are updated annually or as often as necessary based on data accuracy and content relevancy. And we want to make sure that families, communities, and beyond feel comfortable learning about energy and seeing energy in their day-to-day lives and prepared to make good energy conscious decisions. And we've been doing that for 45 years. So we're really pleased to be here this week sharing a little bit about what we do. Our curriculum content is really at the core of what we cover when we do energy trainings or student outreach events or community outreach events. And our curriculum exists at 5 basic levels. And so we have the primary, elementary, intermediate, and secondary level. And then we also have content geared for that career focused environment, the CTE classrooms or the second, third, fourth career folks who might be trying to get a technical certification, for example. We have about 150 titles that we manage across those grade bands. And all of those content pieces are available for download from our website for free at any time as a nonprofit for teachers to use and repurpose through their classrooms. A lot of those materials have supportive videos, links to additional supplemental resources, and some of them are kit-based and there are materials available for those items, and some of them are just paper-based. The large majority of what we offer does not require a kit for use. All of our content is correlated to state and national standards. So if you pull the next generation science standards, you can find the correlations for those to all of our activities and our text-based pieces. Or if your state has their own version of the next generation science standards or their own science content standards as well, you can find those correlations additionally and as well for those folks who need them, the Common Core standards. All of our content is vetted and tested by a teacher advisory board, and we are constantly pulling new information in from teachers who utilize our materials and hoping and trying to make those materials better at all times. And our curriculum team also reviews and updates our content annually for statistical relevancy where necessary and appropriate or available. And as I mentioned, all of that content is downloadable from our website, which is www.need.org. Our curriculum and our teaching and our outreach approach kind of follows this 6 to 7 prong philosophy of we want our kids to teach each other. We want them to learn from each other. And so our curriculum is designed in a way that allows you as the educator to work a little bit smarter and not so hard. A lot of the activities are hands-on in their approach and are focused for students to be able to do some of the teaching and the learning themselves, where you provide the scaffolds and the safe space to get started. And those sort of that 6 or 7 prong approach encourages teachers to, if they're building an energy unit or covering energy in their content, to kind of pull a little bit of content from each of these sort of topic areas. And those topic areas are all included in our curriculum. So in those 150 titles, we cover everything energy. So the first sort of step in your energy unit would probably be covering the science of energy. So energy forms and energy transformations. What is energy and how does it transform? And then from there, we would encourage folks to learn a little bit about the sources of energy, both renewable and non-renewable. As students become interested in renewables and how that transition occurs in our society going forward, it's also important for them to understand how we use non-renewables, to understand why we are making those switches and why those things might be necessary to sort of go through the phasing out of different non-renewable energy sources. Electricity generation, 40% of our energy in the United States right now goes directly towards generating electricity, and it's not going to get smaller because everything we do is electrified anymore, including transportation. So talking about electricity and transportation is important because those are the 2 main ways in which we use most of our energy in the United States. And then talking about the last sort of prongs in that approach are talking about why it's important to save energy. So efficiency and conservation, what those terms mean, how you look at and analyze your energy use and think about what a savings looks like and what the tools are that help you make those savings and why that's important. So what are the environmental ramifications of utilizing our energy sources as is, and what are the impacts to our climate and other ecosystems and things like that, and why is it important to make those savings, not just for our budget, but for our environmental well-being. And then finally, sort of this workforce or careers approach, we want to make sure kids are thinking about and understanding how many options there are for them in the energy industry, and also evaluation. So what are the fun ways in which we can connect the dots between all of these parts of the energy spectrum, and what can we do to make it fun? And so our evaluation tools are sometimes things that look like assessments, and sometimes things that feel nothing like an assessment but act like an assessment for teachers' purposes. And so these are all of the prongs that we kind of focus on in our development of our content, and we encourage folks to kind of pick a little bit from each segment to fill and round out their energy unit. And one of the ways that we encourage folks to do that is through teacher training. And so we try to help prepare teachers for teaching energy and making their students feel as comfortable as possible with energy content. And we do that through a series of one-day workshops, and then also some longer events like our National Energy Conference for Educators. This year's 2026 conference will be announced very soon, its date and location. We just wrapped the 2025 in Louisville, Kentucky, but it's a really awesome opportunity if you are familiar with energy or you want to learn more about bringing energy into your classroom. It's a 4.5, 5-day conference with teachers from across all disciplines across the whole country, some other countries too. And you'll receive training and all kinds of materials and lots of fun opportunities to network with teachers from all different walks. And scholarships for classroom teachers are always available. We try to make it as economical and approachable for teachers to attend as possible. An additional graduate credit is always available. It is a really fun opportunity. So we encourage you to check that out. And one of the other things we offer for folks who are teaching about energy, so say you do take something from this session today or from your toolkit and use it in your classroom, tell us about it. We want to make sure that students and teachers and programs, both in and out of school, are getting recognition for using energy content to teach others, to make their learning fun. And so students who are learning about and teaching others about energy, we encourage them to submit a project to us in the form of a slideshow every year in April. And those students are eligible to attend our Youth Awards ceremony in DC. Students who can't will receive local and national recognition for their projects, for their work in the community and beyond. And it's a really awesome weekend in DC for students who are able to come. And we had students from across the country, from California to Florida to Texas to Kansas to Massachusetts this year. So we welcome all students, and we're always looking for new programs to join us in our Youth Awards program. As I mentioned, you're going to learn from experts today from NEED and beyond, but they'll mention a lot of activities, they'll mention things that you can do with your students, but it's important to know where you can access all those resources. And all of those resources can be found at need.org. And our website is easy to navigate. I know you all can do it. I won't necessarily kind of take you on a tour, but I will say our educators tab is where you can find things like PowerPoints to support your classroom resources. It's where you can download all of our curriculum. It's where you can find the standards assessments and our standards alignments, spreadsheets and things so that you can find out what activities meet your standards and your needs. The students tab is where you're going to find more information about our Youth Awards program. It's where you're going to find more information about sort of quick classroom activities that students can do and our energy info books. And our events tab is where you're going to find our calendar of upcoming events. How can you attend a workshop? All of our workshops are free to attend. We usually provide a substitute reimbursement or a stipend for attending. We usually always give breakfast and lunch and parking if that's necessary too. And almost all teachers get to leave or are shipped a kit for participating. So you can leave with curriculum that you'll actually use in your classroom in the future. So I encourage you to check out our events. They're often site specific, so location specific. So I encourage you to check out what's near your area. And if not, maybe look into attending our National Energy Conference that I mentioned. And all of our content, like I mentioned, you can download from the educators tab or the shop tab if you need it at any time. Everything is housed in a shop environment, but you'll see that you can download things for free from PDF just by clicking the drop down box and selecting the free PDF version. So I encourage you to check out our website, learn more about us. I will be around to answer more questions. But before we do that, I thought it would be cool to do a little hands-on activity with students and or to showcase a little hands-on activity. And one of the things that we often like to showcase is our Science of Energy unit. Easy, 6 stations. Students are learning about energy transformations, the forms of energy, and how energy is always on the move for transforming. And it includes a lot of quick, easy, hands-on components that students can use. One of the easiest ones is vinegar and baking soda. It's an activity we've all done. Most of the time, students are thinking about vinegar and baking soda from the context of making a volcano, but they often are thinking about volcanoes and how they get warm. And so what we're going to do is we're going to give them some vinegar and we're going to use an equal amount of baking soda. We're going to ask them to put it in a plastic bag and we're going to take the temperature of it to start. And they'll find that the temperature is what it is. And then as we add our baking soda and equal amounts of vinegar, my thermometer is stuck here. Always awesome to do this ahead of time. So you're going to take your temperature of your vinegar to start. You're going to take note of your vinegar and then you'll pour your baking soda in. And what are we going to see? We're obviously going to see that bubbles appear. But what we're also going to note is instead of our temperature going down like we might be used to with a volcano, or temperature going up, I buried the lead. Our temperature is going to go down when we mix vinegar and baking soda. The reason that happens is because we are creating a chemical process where vinegar and baking soda mix. And this is a chemical reaction. Our vinegar and baking soda are reacting, bubbles are forming, gas is forming. That's a clue that a chemical reaction is happening. And the temperature is actually going down because in this case, we have an endothermic reaction. Chemical energy turned into thermal energy or a change in thermal energy. And the reason that happens is because there's not enough energy present in the reaction to proceed for the reactants to products. And so the reactants pull energy from their surroundings to help allow that reaction to proceed. We had an endothermic reaction. And students will be really surprised at how this bag feels, but also how the temperature drops drastically. Vinegar and baking soda. A lot of our activities are just like this. Easy things you probably have already seen before, but bring in that energy content and make it relevant. And so I want you to hear from some experts at Need and the things that they do and how you can really energize your classroom. And so we're going to hear from 3 Need experts. Robert Griegelite, who is Need's advisor in student education or student engagement and educational technology. He's also a physics and special education teacher and a technology coach in Illinois. We have Nina Corley, who is a teacher advisory board member, a longtime teacher of Need content, facilitator of our workshops, a high school educator, a grant writer at O'Connell Preparatory Academy in Galveston, Texas, and Tyler Svitkovich, who is Need's Kentucky State Program Coordinator. He's a facilitator and he's an energy auditor. So he's a building operator certified. They're going to talk to you today a little bit more about how to energize your classroom. We hope you enjoy, and I can't wait to hear the questions and things that you are excited to do in your classroom. Thanks so much.
Hi, my name's Rob Grigolite. I'm an educator with the NEED Project. I have backgrounds within math, science, and special education and technology. I'm here today to talk a little bit about those moments that sparked your interest in science, those engaging hands-on moments where students really connect with the material. In many cases, there's a lot of reasons, whether it's a busy curriculum, a very hard scheduled test date, or the comfort level of your peers, team, or co-teachers, that sometimes get us off that sparkable moment, get us away from those hands-on moments, especially when we're learning about science and energy. Today we're going to take a look at a couple of tips and tricks that can help make room for those sparks, for those hands-on moments when you're teaching your students about energy and science in the classroom. I have 4 simple tips to help you sneak in that hands-on spark into your classroom. First and foremost, if we're trying to make sure that it fits into our curriculum, we need to make sure that it's accessible by our curriculum. So always connect any project, any hands-on activity to those accessible skills that you're already looking at in your classrooms. Part 2, if I want to make sure that I have time for active learning in class to build, design, explore, some of that passive learning has to go elsewhere. And one of the best ways to do that is to flip your classroom, to engage students with that visual video connection instead of that sit and get mentality that classrooms can sometimes fall into. Our third tip, if you're going to make something for the sustainability of the project, we want to make sure that your materials are reusable. Make sure that they are upcycled or accessible, something that you can find every single year, irregardless of your budget, irregardless of changes within your classroom. And then part 4, very important, leave room for creativity. Yes, they're designing something that can be tested, that can be built and designed, but let them put their own little spin of creativity on there. Sometimes that personal connection is what really brings a student who's not engaged by STEM education into that world of understanding energy in the future. The existing curriculum is quite often your biggest hurdle. It's really hard to get past what has been assessed, what has been expected by the school, the district, the state, or even the teachers that teach the class. So we always really need to find ways to make sure anything we do hands-on doesn't come off as a novelty. If we are connecting it first and foremost to the existing curriculum, the existing accessible skills, whether that's vocabulary, content, or calculatable learning skills, if you can make sure that your hands-on activity checks off a couple of those learning targets, you have a much better chance of making sure it fits into your classroom, into your curriculum. A great example of thinking for this is instead of giving another worksheet with another word problem, which is very common within science, we love to give context to our content, but take that word problem off the page. Make it a real life hands-on problem. That's the easiest way to connect anything that's accessible to a hands-on activity. Flipping your classroom isn't a new concept, especially in the days post-lockdown learning. We have that opportunity to engage students with video learning. Students are already engaged by their cellular devices. They already are engaged by that connection with you. If you can put your face, your voice, your insight, your explanation into a video form, you're going to create engagement. You're also going to give those students the opportunity to pause. Those students who are too afraid to raise their hand, a little too nervous to say, hey, you're talking too fast. Hey, I don't understand that. Hey, can you repeat it 6 times? They can pause, repeat. You can use programs like Edpuzzle, like even Google Classroom has its own YouTube activities where you can put accessible questions directly in there. So we can use part 2, tip 2 of flipping our classroom to assess those skills from tip number 1. So as we're going through, we can also prove that the process to our hands-on activity is building understanding throughout the entire curriculum. This hands-on or this video can also be not just informational, but it could be an explanation of what the hands-on activity is going to be. It can be an introduction to a project, the process for a lab or experiment. However you want to use it, it takes that passive and active and it flips it. Instead of having to sit and get in my classroom, I now have students who had the opportunity, whether they choose to take it or not, to come into my classroom with some background knowledge. So those students who are ready to run will run. Those students who need my support will still have me there to support them. So now my hands-on activity is accessible and connects to my curriculum. I know that my students are going to come in with the passive learning portion already done. Maybe they've practiced a couple of the types of problems they're going to have to do during the hands-on challenge. Now they can come in and do some hands-on. They're ready for that active learning. So I need to make sure that my active learning is sustainable. That means using reusable, upcyclable, or accessible materials. For example, if I'm building generators year after year, I'm going to have to get a lot of wire so we can wrap coils, so we can generate electricity. A really great and engaging way to show electricity generation and energy, but the materials are going to be part of my budget. If I want to show chemical energy and show a rocket launch, I have to buy rocket engines and rocket parts every single year. But if I do something, for example, Need Project Science of Energy kits has a lot of reusable materials, parts that you don't have to replace each year, kits that go together already. That makes it a lot easier to come back to that activity. If I have to buy everything new every single time, it becomes a challenge. Especially if those materials are hard to get. If I'm using things that I can go get at the dollar or the $1.25 or the $1.50 or the $2 or whatever size it is by the time we see this, we have the opportunity to get those materials real easily. I can reproduce it. Things like cups, things like paper, things like straws even, as much as we always want to be knowledgeable and mindful about our use as those one-time use materials. Reusable materials are also really helpful. You can also consider replaceable materials. This is where, if you have access to things like 3D printing, replaceable materials are really helpful. You may not always have access to be able to buy new gear sets when you're teaching about gear ratios, but you can always print new gears. You can always print new models and parts. Last step. You've gotten your students something accessible, something that already fits in their curriculum. You've kind of time crunched a little bit by preloading the passive information. You're using materials that make it a little bit more sustainable. Now give them some creativity. This is where that extra time is a little bit harder to find, a little bit harder to access. We want to make sure that they have time to make it their own, to build that personal connection. Whether that's redesigning their first prototype, whether it's having a general list of materials that they can build from, like an egg drop, for example. Whatever it is, give them the opportunity. A great way to explore creativity, whether it's not just the design portion of STEM, but the communication. Communication skills and the pieces that come together, especially working in a team, are so important in the future workplace. So give the students the opportunity to communicate. If they've done a calculation, instead of it just being an answer on a page, it's now the efficiency rating. It's now the top speed of their rubber band powered vehicle that they are selling to the market, that they are pitching to a group of teachers. Give them the opportunity. The challenge with creativity is we lose some of the less creative pieces. This is where we have to start cutting things like depth of content for some things to make more engagement in other content, to give more practice and skills beyond what's on the curriculum page, but those skills that are soft skills, executive functioning skills, and just social emotional learning skills. Give them the opportunity to connect to the material, learn from the material, and learn from each other. Let's take these 4 tips and connect them to a very helpful and common energy hands-on activity, a good old-fashioned bouncy ball lab. Now for step 1, we want to make sure that this is connected to accessible skills, things that might already exist in our labs, exist in our curriculum, so it does not feel novel. We're going to take our GPE equation. If I'm teaching a physics class and I'm learning about mechanical energy, gravitational potential energy is going to be high on that list. I can take the GPE of a ball at 2 different locations, after the bounce and before the bounce, and I can measure the efficiency of that ball's bounce, how much energy is lost through heat, through sound. I can take that GPE and I can predict the velocity right before it hits the ground. I can predict future heights based on the efficiency lost. There's a lot of calculatable or observable, whether I'm working with younger students or older students. Now, to prepare for that hands-on activity, prepare for that data collection, those calculations, for that measurement that I want to make sure that they have time to do, I might flip some of my passive. Instead of coming in and saying, I'm going to explain this lab and then try to fit it into the time, I might have the students watch a video the night before. A flipped video that might explain the techniques, the procedure, give some examples of the calculations that they'll be doing, showing them kind of what to expect so they can come in, boom, and have every opportunity to get every spark out of that hands-on activity. They can then, using those materials, collect that data more efficiently. Because with the video, you could make your own. You can use a video, like the Need Project has a YouTube channel with a bouncy ball lab video that you could be using for your students. You can then take those materials, which are all really reusable. We have bouncy balls that are reusable, cleanable. You can use common meter sticks. Students can even use their cell phones. It's an opportunity to show how those toys can be tools as they record the bounce height of their bouncy ball. And then we can always leave room for creativity. That creativity could be, let's make bouncy balls. Let's find those kits and those materials. Let's use different materials to explore polymers and take that next step into building elastic materials. Or it could be, let's take the data we collected, the efficiency of our bouncy ball, and let's make a short marketing campaign. I'm going to sell this bouncy ball. It's more efficient than yours, and I can prove it using the data, using the information I've collected. It's an opportunity to take those STEM skills and explore that STEAM part, the arts of creativity. Another great example is Need's Wind Can Do Work curriculum. This activity is a hands-on model that ends up being a working wind turbine. It generates power, it generates work, it lifts paper clips off the ground, does not necessarily generate electricity, although there are versions that you could take your students to beyond this. But if I'm looking for something quick to fit into my curriculum, again, step one, make sure it's an accessible skill. If I'm lifting something up, I'm working with GPE. Again, a lot of calculations, accessible skills at the middle school and high school level when we talk about energy become very calculation based. So I have GPE, I have work, I have all of these different power calculations I could look at with energy over time. So again, we're taking a worksheet word problem and we're making something real where they can collect their own data, answer their own questions. Again, the Need Project has great video curriculum on this hands-on activity. All these hands-on activities, you always want to make sure you provide students with very detailed instructions, support to help them as they learn, but a good visual is always helpful. So whether it's a video of you making it, building your own wind turbine, or the Need Project's wind turbine being built, it's an opportunity for the students to come in prepared to build. They're still going to have questions. They're still going to need your support, but those students who are ready to run, they can run. Those students that need a little push, you're still there to give them a little push. Now, this is a great example of accessible and sometimes, in some cases, upcyclable materials. This hands-on activity utilizes things like styrofoam cups, straws, etc. Straws can be reused. Paper that goes into making the wind blades, blades, can be recycled and utilized years down the line. Cups can be replaced and be done with reusable cups if you don't want your students to have modifications. So there's a lot of great ways to take even an existing activity and find ways to make it so you don't have to replenish as much as you go. Part 4, we always look for creativity. Now, this activity is an example of engineering steps. Step 1, step 2, here's how you build something using someone else's instructions. Very important skill for students to build. But there's opportunities for them to redesign their blades. There's opportunities for them to color and decorate, especially with younger students. Again, anytime you can have students work to communicate. Commonly, we communicate science through labs, through write-ups, but if they can communicate it through a sales pitch, if they can communicate it through a diagram explaining the parts of their wind turbine, this is also an opportunity in any of these cases. Even though we started with our curriculum, even though we started with trying to fit it in, it's an opportunity with any of these hands-on activities to then explore beyond. Especially if you're doing everything you can to make time and room for the hands-on activities, it's so important to make those final connections. And that's kind of the secret step 5 to all of this, is once they have taken the time to connect to what you're already doing, once you flipped your classroom a little bit to make room for those hands-on activities so we can flip the passive with the active, once you found activities that are reusable, upcyclable, or accessible, and then found a way to give some creativity, step 5 is give them chance to explore. Take this spark as a jumping off point. They may be learning about the mechanics of energy in calculation form, but if they're building a wind turbine, they could be learning about the impact wind has on electricity in their state. They could be exploring career paths within that field. So as much as we think of hands-on as a novelty, as much as sometimes we have to find ways to sneak it in, to fit it in, so we can give our students a little bit of engagement, it really is a path to bigger things beyond what we often have time to put into our classroom. So whether you can hit number 5 in your classroom or help guide that student down that path, we don't want to leave the context of our content on the floor, and giving it purpose, giving it connections to industries, to career paths, just like the energy industry, really opens doors for students as they take those next steps in their life, where they try to connect what the ACT and SAT are assessing them on, to how they can do a greater good in the world. Thank you very much. Those are my 5 tips for sneaking hands-on STEM energy curriculum into your curriculum. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Nina Corley. Currently, I am a science teacher at O'Connell College Preparatory School on Galveston Island in Texas. And this past year, I was privileged to be able to teach biology, chemistry, physics, environmental science, health, speech, robotics, and was able to incorporate energy content into all of these classes. The National Energy Education Development Projects makes it so easy. I found in my many years of teaching that if I can get students interested in what they are learning, if it's hands-on, if they feel they can take ownership of the results, they are much more involved in that learning process, and the NEED curriculum has allowed me to easily incorporate the hands-on activities into my already existing curriculum. I always start out my year using Science of Energy, one of the pieces of curriculum in my chemistry classes. It allows my students to become accustomed to lab rules, at the same time letting them get into the lab, investigate the forms, sources of energy, energy transformations, while learning how to record and analyze the data from their experiments. I love that the NEED curriculum has all of the safety rules already there. It has lab sheets. So I don't have to do all that. Also, all of their curriculum is aligned to each of the state's standards and national standards, so I can easily find which pieces I can incorporate into my already existing curriculum. I move on, I use the H2 Educate in my chemistry class, where we're looking at hydrogen. They explore hydrogen. Then when we are learning about making and breaking bonds in chemistry, I'll include pieces from fossil fuels to products, exploring petroleum and natural gas. There is a great piece that allows you to look at distillation and fractioning tower that really helps the students understand how the size of the carbon atom relates to the boiling point in a hands-on way that before I was using this, they never got right on their testing. There's also great pieces on transportation where the kids gain an understanding of what sort of carbon footprint each type of transportation produces, as well as what it costs to travel from point A to point B, but it's done in a fun way. The students gain this understanding at a time when they are thinking about buying cars themselves. My chemistry class, it's their sophomore year. Everybody's taking driver's ed, getting their driver's license. This gives them information that they're invested in because they're choosing what car it is that they're going to drive. For my physics class, I use Energy Works at the beginning of the year, again, to get them used to the lab. But for my conceptual physics, each of the different stations in Energy Works covers those concepts that we're going to be following throughout the year. So it lets me see, okay, what do they already know? What am I going to need to concentrate on throughout the year. I move on, we take a look at exploring nuclear energy. In my physics class, we do thermodynamics. I use pieces from the exploring wind, the solar and photovoltaic, offshore wind. In my biology class, I incorporate the climate science curriculum. It's exciting. There is a carbon cycle that is so great because the activity allows them to explore the difference between pre-industrial and current, where the carbon is in which sinks and what those differences are. And they get to see it. And all you have to have is a deck of cards. That's one of the other really wonderful things about this curriculum is that most of the activities, you already have the stuff in your lab that you can use, or you can go to the dollar store and pick it up. Or, if you're lucky enough to be in an area where you can attend one of the workshops, you can get the kit so that you have everything that you need. There also is a great greenhouse and a beaker activity where they get to see firsthand, they're exploring and see what happens when you add carbon dioxide to an environment. If you add sunlight to that, or if it's in darkness, what does it do to the temperature of that environment? And not only that, there's one where you're seeing how carbon dioxide affects the pH of water. And so it's giving those kids a chance to explore. You're not just throwing out ideas, oh, we have, there's climate change or there's global warming. It's looking to see how these things affect stuff scientifically. And they are getting to do it themselves. They are in charge of these investigations. The other great thing about this curriculum is that it's all kids teaching kids. So again, they're getting to take ownership. They're divided into groups most of the time. They become, the masters of theirs, and then they're going to teach it to the other groups. So again, it gets them involved, that ownership. My environmental science class is made so much more relevant through the energy efficiency and conservation activities from NEED, the global trading game, baseload balance, and various transportation activities. What is great, the hands-on labs, as I said, they don't really require the specialized equipment, but it gets the kids involved and really understanding, okay, this is what happens if they have to mine for coal, then what do they have to do after that? You've got to make that land back better than it was before. But it's doing it in a hands-on way. And global trading lets them also really think about, the resources that are on the earth, but where are they located? Is it all evenly dispersed? Is it different in different places? How do people trade to be able to get what they need? And as I said before, I use pieces in my health class. I use the photovoltaics curriculum when we're studying about sun safety. And it's something that is really important, to my students. And you might not think about being able to use the curriculum in a speech class, but there are great pieces on debate. There are energy enigma, there's a transportation ones, and it's all laid out. So I'm teaching my students how to do a debate, but at the same time, they're getting energy information as well. I also use those pieces in some of the other classes, but I think one of the things that has really helped to engage my students is allowing them to be the teacher. So what we learn, we share with our community. Okay, the kids get to share with younger students at the elementary, at the middle school. If they're invited to go over and help, they'll often take activities that we've been doing from the NEED curriculum and do those hands-on activities with those students. When they visit our school, I have students that are in charge of the labs, and they'll have the students, doing things from the photovoltaics activities. Sometimes we're doing stuff from fossil fuels to products, but they are teaching. And once they've done this, it's given them confidence. They're able to share. And then they've moved on to going out into the community, we have a farmer's market that allows students to have a booth. And so they have been teaching the community the science behind recycling. So recycling plastics and aluminum, they set up little labs. They explain to people why it's, how it's done, why it's important, what you can do to help the community. And this, again, really helps with that self-esteem with students. It gives them confidence. They see a reason as to why they're learning what they are learning. And so they are sharing this with the community. And then we have a school garden, and it's not just the school garden that they're working with, but they are sharing what they learn in that garden with the community. So first of all, they have community members that share with them. So we have master gardeners come in, people from Texas A&M, from the Agriculture Institute that come in. And so they are sharing that with those people, and they are able to then share with other people what they've learned. So they go out, they teach classes on how to do the gardening and then how to prepare the food that they have grown in that garden. This has allowed students to gain confidence in their public speaking, but also they've tried foods that they never tried before. So using what they've learned as an outreach has also enabled them to be able to apply and submit projects to the youth awards. And their attendance to youth awards has also affected their lives tremendously. One of the students I had, he was afraid to get up and speak in front of class. In speech class, he would have to go into the bathroom every time before he was making a speech. He was scared to come out and talk. But through the activities slowly that we did at school, and then going to youth awards where they're working with other students, working with groups. And then once you've attended youth awards, you can apply to come back as a youth staff member. And this student did that. And he came back several years as a youth staff member. And I remember sitting in the audience as he was up in front, being an MC in front of everyone, speaking, being the person in charge. It was incredible. I've seen students who've gone from not being able to speak in front of a class to being able to speak in front of a huge crowd. It has helped students to get scholarships, to be able to go into college and to find careers. I highly recommend it. It has made a world of difference in my teaching.
Hello, my name is Tyler Spikovich, and I work for the National Energy Education Development Project, or NEED for short. Years ago, I went to the Naval Academy Preparatory School, University of Louisville, and graduated at Morehead State University, when I then became a teacher. I taught for 3 years. After that, I found NEED and began to work with students and teachers throughout the state, implementing energy education for a local utility company. The NEED project has also taken me across the nation as well as the world, where I've done workshops in Kuwait City, Kuwait, and Doha, Qatar. For NEED, I currently facilitate workshops, work with students, and I'm also something called Building Operator Certified, which is very similar to what an energy manager does, where we look at buildings as a system and try to save money. With this credential, I am able to work with students and do something called an educational energy audit, in which we will talk about today. Typically, a day in the life of my job is looking at buildings and the science that goes behind it. So the first thing we're going to look at is the building envelope, which is the walls. As you can see here, lots of different landscape of walls, the ceiling, the floors, and that also encompasses windows and doors. I also look at how the building is going to be used. For instance, you see this space behind me, more of an auditorium type. So students are going to be in here learning at their tables, most likely have a presentation, usually an instructor here, similar to what you would see in college, right? Or you might have students working in a classroom similar to this one. Sometimes the space is just used for recreation, like this commons area that you'll see here. A great place to relax. You see a young man over there working. After I look at the building envelope, I'm then going to look at things that make the building more comfortable, such as the heating in the winter or the cooling in the summer. For instance, these vents that are blowing out cool air to keep the participants and the occupants of this building very cool. Some buildings have also done a fantastic job of implementing things like a green roof, like you see out here. This is a great way to add some vegetation, give it some good visual aesthetics, and then also have a utilized space, such as a garden for herbs or vegetables that you can then implement in your daily lunch. Another very important part of my job is safety. So identifying the exits in their stairwells. Most important thing is that occupants are safe and comfortable. If you're in a school, say, teaching and education is one of the toughest professions to be enthusiastic and encourage and motivate young people. That can sometimes be very difficult, and it can make that job exponentially difficult if the room is too hot or too cold, or students just don't feel safe, or they're just not comfortable. So a lot of my job is placed on making the occupants as comfortable as can be so they can get through the tasks that they need to. I also spend a little bit of time in restrooms where we can look at water and lighting, of course. Is the water too hot? Is the water too cold? This can offer us an opportunity to save some energy if the water is too hot. And then also for the safety of when you're washing your hands, that the water is at a temperature that's going to adequately kill germs. Through this video, you've got to see a lot of different spaces. We got to see a commons area, got to see a more of an auditorium type, got to see a classroom. This is more of a lab. And what this offers me as an energy auditor or building operator person is to see what energy is being used in here that's not used elsewhere. So for instance, appliances. So it's going to take me to things like televisions, computers. You can see that this lab has something set up where they're going to be using incandescent light bulbs, which are very inefficient, but it's going to show something with climate change. Soon, I'll show you the tool that we use to monitor energy usage in things like this. As we talk about the building envelope, we talk about things like a vestibule, in which case I'm getting ready to enter, which is essentially two sets of doors. So it's about 90 degrees outside. I come into the middle of the vestibule. It's a little cooler than outside. I would say around 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I'm going to actually enter the building through the next set of doors, in which case it feels really well because it is air conditioned, it's cooled. It's very important to understand what a vestibule is used and to keep those doors closed at all times. Oftentimes in a school, we leave these doors open to allow students to get through the doors quicker, but it's very important to save energy and save money to keep those doors closed. Saving energy is important, not only for the safety and the comfort of the occupants, but it also saves money. Who doesn't want a little bit more jingle in their pockets, whether it's in the home or in the school or even in a business where we can reallocate that money for more fun things like maybe ice cream. Another side of that is looking at how our energy is created. A lot of non-renewable energy sources, which oftentimes create pollution. So if we can reduce consumption in buildings, we're going to use less of these non-renewable energy sources and allow our buildings to be more green. Any professional in any industry is going to have some tools to use. I'm now going to show you some of those tools that I use with students across the nation. One of those is a digital hygrometer. This is going to tell me the air temperature in Fahrenheit or Celsius. But then the other valuable thing is it's going to give me the amount of humidity that is present in this building. That is a percent measurement. And you can see right now that this building is showing about 60% humidity. That is a smidge high, but not too high. Nothing to be alarmed about. If a building has too much humidity, that's excess moisture. That can ruin books, and it can also have adverse health effects like mold buildup, which of course is harmful to breathe. Not enough humidity, and you're gonna not feel comfortable. Your nose is gonna maybe start bleeding. Not a good environment. So we have to add things, either a humidifier to put moisture in the air or a dehumidifier to remove moisture out of the air. Earlier, I mentioned the water temperature can be one of those things we're going to measure. We typically want our water temperature in a restroom to be about 115 degrees Fahrenheit to about 125 degrees Fahrenheit. This can sometimes be a little tricky when you have those automatic water turn on. So I can then get a measurement. Looks like the water in here is doing pretty good. Some other energy efficient things, like you heard, is the automatic toilet flusher that saves us from those excess flush. You're using too much water. The automatic water and the faucet absolutely does the same thing. The tool I use to measure water temperature is this digital thermometer, which comes off and I can run the water over this tip and get the measurement. Another tool that I use is a digital light meter that's going to measure foot candles of light. So for instance, here I am in a stairwell, and typically you want the light where you're going to be stepping so you can see the steps. So I'm going to back up a little, hold my light sensor down. My light meter is showing around 60 foot candles, which tells me that this space is very safe, almost overlit. But that's not necessarily a problem when you're looking at a stairwell, a place where you could slip, fall, can be very dangerous. As we just looked at a stairwell, the light's going to be a little different in something like a conference room or a classroom. Here we see a gentleman working. Let's see what the light meter reads in this little conference room.
Let's see. It's reading right now at 52.3 foot candles. And it's plenty of light to be able to work on my computer and not have any eye strain.
Another tool that I have in my tool bag is an infrared thermometer, which is great for those hard to reach places. For instance, when you're in a 3-story building and I cannot measure the temperature of those vents safely without a very long ladder or a genie lift, I use something like this. It's going to give me an infrared signal and can shine up to 50, even 100 feet. It's going to give me a good temperature measurement of air coming out of vents, can also identify leaks around a window or leaks around a door of where that outside cold air, that outside warm air is infiltrating our system. The last tool that I like to use is a kilowatt meter. This is going to measure electricity usage. You can actually do a lot of things with this tool. It's my personal favorite. So I'm going to plug it into an outlet. You can see that it's going to show 120 volts. This is obviously because it's a 110 volt system on a 110 volt breaker. I'm then going to press the watt button. You can see that no energy is being used currently because nothing's drawing that load. So they take something like this flashlight. I plug it in to charge, and now I'm getting a measurement. It's showing 7 watts of electricity. I can then use a little bit of mathematics and convert that to kilowatts and then estimate the time on how long it's going to be charged, because we pay our bills based on the kilowatt hour. Anywhere from 11 cents to 20 cents, typically about 15, 16 cents is the national average for a cost of electricity in the United States. Larger cities could be more rural areas with an abundance of electricity can be a little cheaper. I can also press a button on this kilowatt meter that'll do the time for me. So for instance, if I note today, say it's noon, I can make a note that I plug this in, press this kWh button or kilowatt hour. I can then come back 12 hours later or 24 hours later and get an actual kilowatt hour measurement of how much money or how much electricity it used to charge my flashlight. Thank you for spending some time with me today, looking at how buildings use energy, how we can use energy more efficiently, and really a great way to audit a building. Keep in mind that if you don't have the tools that we showed today, the most important tools you can use in energy management is really your eyes, ears, nose, all your senses, right? Look for leaks. Look for things that just don't seem right. If you feel too warm or you feel too cold, that's using too much energy, right? So look at all these things, take students, educate people on things to look for, ways to improve our buildings, comfort, safety, and especially energy usage. Once again, I'm Tyler Stikovich, and I really appreciate you taking the time with me today.
Thank you for attending the first 2025 Earth Science Week webinar. If you have any additional questions, please contact us at info@earthsciweek.org. The recording of this webinar will be immediately available on our YouTube channel. And please join us for the next webinar in the 2025 Earth Science Week webinar series on geothermal energy, sponsored by Geothermal Rising. We'd also like to take this opportunity to remind you about the Earth Science Week contests in visual arts, photography, essay, and video. All submissions are due Friday, October 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and please see our website for more information.